Hi, I'm Fidel Master Cherbulenko, and in this series I explore the typical mistakes of people rated anywhere between 1000 and 2000. This is a first reaction, no engine analysis of a chess.com game played between 1101 versus 1149. Let's start. Alright, so e4, e5, knight f3 developing the knight, attacking the pawn, knight c6, defending the pawn, developing the knight, bishop b5. Okay, so this is called the Ruy Lopez or the Spanish game. You know, the bishop put pressure on the knight, which defends the pawn. So eventually we could take the knight and then take the e5 pawn if black doesn't defend it. Pawn d6, defending the pawn, right? But at the same time, this pins the knight to the king. So, you know, it's not so great for black to have like this pin, right? Let's see, castles. Yeah, this is fine. Two other moves would be d4, right? Playing actively in the center. Now, especially with the knight is pinned, d4, you know, maybe threatening d5 as well, and de as well. Let's say we take, and then we can take with the knight, have a centralized knight, put pressure on the c6 knight, have this nice pin, and then next we could like castle, play knight c3, and we control the center. We have a central piece on d4, and also the control of the d5 square, right, is under control. The e4 pawn guards d5, we're gonna go also knight c3, so we control the two key central squares, d4 and d5. So this also would have been good. There's also another idea that white can do either after castling, or white could do immediately, and that idea is c3 d4, right? c3 d4. The point being that if black ever takes, we take back with a pawn, not the piece but the pawn, and a pawn on d4 is much more dangerous for black than a piece on d4. So for example, let's say we go here, we make some random move. Let's say let's say knight f6, rook e1, bishop e7, c3, let's say we castle, and then we go d4, and now if black takes, we play cd, and now this is much stronger than a knight. Why? Because now we have eventually moves like d5 or e5, where our pawns attack his knights, so our pawn is of less value. Pawn is 1 point, knight is 3 points, so it's an actual attack. So we make him go back, so he gains space, while we force his minor pieces to go back, and right, and like go back to like his last and like 8th and 7th rank, and so he gains space. Okay, so it's more mobile for us. It gives us more scope. Whereas if you have like a knight on d4, let's say, well, it's knight versus knight. It's like of the same value. So like he's not obliged to really move his knight anywhere. He could just play bishop d7 and defend it. That's why it's better to have pawns in the center than pieces in the center. So pawns first, pieces second. Okay. But okay, he castled. That's fine. Bishop d7, unpinning the knight. Okay, makes sense. Pawn to c3. So white actually does apply this idea. Yeah, this is a typical idea in the Ruy Lopez. Okay, pawn a6, attacking the bishop. Bishop c6. Okay, this I'm not so sure about. Usually the bishops are stronger than the knights. Bishops are 3.5 points, knights are 3 points, especially if it's an open position. So I think bishop c6 here is not actually so good. In the Ruy Lopez, usually our most precious piece is the light squared bishop, because like black puts all his pawns on like dark squares, so especially this diagonal is very weak for black, right? So white could play like there's this idea bishop a4 to still keep some pressure, but then if black plays b5, we could either put it on b3, right, and have pressure on this diagonal. Next we have ideas like pawn d4 and then knight g5 attacking f7, right? f7 is the weakest link for black, you know. Or we could put it on c2, right? c2 is also fine. It might look more passive, but it's guarding, it's guarding the e4 pawn, right? Then we want to go d4, and if black ever plays ed, we go cd, then eventually we could play e5 and open up this diagonal, and then attack h7. Do you see? So there is a point to bishop c2 as well, you know. Or we could play bishop b3, let's say we go knight a5, attacking our bishop, well, then we go to c2. But now his knight is in the corner, whereas we put the bishop on c2, which is also fine, like we've discovered, and then we go d4. And again, if black ever takes, we go cd, and then we could push e5, open up this bishop. Okay, so I think this is what white should have done. If you wanna like win more games, you should keep more tension. Don't just exchange pieces right and left, you know. Keep more tension, and especially in the Ruy Lopez, don't trade your light square bishop for a knight. This is your most precious piece because it puts pressure either on this diagonal or potentially on this diagonal if it opens up. Okay, So bishop c6 I think is inaccurate. Okay, bishop takes c6, knight a3. What? I mean, it just hangs the pawn. One, it hangs the pawn, but true, even strategically doesn't make any sense. Like putting the knight in the corner makes zero sense. So what white should have done is white should have played rook e1 to defend the pawn and then go for d4 if possible. This would be like ideal, right? Rook e1 and then play d4. Because the only advantage of taking the knight on c6 is that now the e5 pawn is less guarded, because there's no more knight on c6. So we can put more pressure on the e5 pawn. You know, so this I think would have made much more sense, you know. Yeah, but knight a3, I mean, usually the knight, so we go d4, and then usually the knight in the Ruy Lopez goes through d2, f1, g3. That's how we usually do it. From g3 it defends the e4 pawn, but also can attack the king, you know, by eventually playing knight f5 and attacking like g7, h6 pawns and squares, you know. So that's the typical placement for the knight in the Ruy Lopez. g3, not a3. So knight a3, big mistake. Plus, like I said, tactically, we just lose the pawn. Okay, bishop. And even if we did not lose the pawn, still it would not make as much sense, because it's just a bad square. Okay, bishop takes c4. Yeah, I mean, queen a4, if you're wondering, it doesn't work because then bishop c6, right? So we don't win anything. Let's see, pawn d4. Okay, that's a good move. That's a good move. You know, with rook e1 ideas, right? Attacking the king. Okay, d4, that's a good move. Bishop takes f3. Okay, queen takes f3, activating the queen, attacking the b7 pawn. All right, pawn b. Wait, what? This is a very bad move. This is a horrible move. Bishop g5. Okay, I see the point, obviously, if black takes the bishop and we take rook, but I mean, black is not obliged to take. You know, they could just play like bishop e7 or something. They're not obliged. I think an even stronger move would be queen c6 check, right? Because now queen e7 doesn't work because we take rook, so they have to move a king, which is horrible, right? They should never have to move a king. And now we can, let's say, take on e5, and after we take, we could play, let's say, bishop e3, threatening bishop c5 basically with checkmate, or we have to give up a queen and then we just take it. Also threatening rook d1, you know, and rook e1 and all sorts of stuff. Black is basically in yeah, in trouble. Yeah, we also have ideas like f4 or getting rid of this pawn, opening up the center, you know. Maybe there are also some other moves. Maybe, yeah, I think this is good enough. Right? Yeah. So this is what white should have done. Queen c6 check. With huge compensation for white, I mean. Black king is just in the center. So bishop g5, yeah, probably not the best, but okay. Also not bad. Also not bad. Okay, bishop e7. Okay. See, the problem is that now if we give a check, he has king f8. So it's not as in the center. So it's more safe for black. Yeah. Okay, takes. Yeah, no. White missed a huge opportunity. Now there's no queen c6 check because the knight's guarding it. Yeah, huge opportunity missed. Okay. Takes. Rook d1. Okay, good move. Attacking the queen. Queen b8. Okay. c4. Nah, I think it's too slow. We shouldn't somehow... Ideally, we'd like to prevent black from castling. Like, we're down a pawn, but we have this activity with d file, and our king is safe, and his queen is weird, and king in the center. So ideally, although we're down a pawn, if we could stop him from castling, we would have pretty good compensation. But it's not so clear how to do it. It's not so clear how to do it. Let's see. So queen b8. I mean, yeah, we have like maybe like queen g3, one interesting move, double attack, right? But he can castle. Okay, he castles, but then at least we get the pawn back. So it's not so bad, right? Also next we have ideas like rook d7. I'm putting pressure on the 7th rank. So this is not so bad. Maybe he'd have to play knight g6. Knight g6. And then maybe h4. Not so clear. Castle. Oops. castles h5, knight f4, threatening the pawn and threatening knight e2, winning the queen. Yeah, no, this is not so clear. Maybe queen g3 is not. Oh, wait a bit. Thinking maybe queen. Let me see. Queen g4, threatening this, but also threatening this. But then we castle, and then we have maybe like rook d7 with some compensation, right? Rook d7, let's say knight g6, and then rook d1, and maybe then ideas like this, you know, also maybe activate our knight here, attacking g7, you know. So maybe some compensation. Although we're down a pawn, but our rooks are pretty active, right? And his king is a little bit alone. So this might be some compensation for white. So I think this would have been much more dynamic than c4. Maybe even queen e3 also interesting, attacking the pawn. And then if knight g6, we have maybe like queen c5, right? And also preventing him from castling. So this might also be interesting. Yeah, my point is that in these kind of positions, when you're down a pawn, but your opponent has a king in the center, think much more dynamic. Actual threats like c4, I think is too slow. More dynamic moves. There's also rook e1, by the way. Also, right, attacking the pawn. Also, I think makes sense. You know, knight g6. Then we have like maybe even like. Actually, we have just queen c6 check. Yeah, because now the knight is no longer guarding c6. So rook e1, and when we go f6, well, that's weakening this diagonal, right? So this cannot be great for black. Then we can go queen h5, maybe check, you know. And if we go knight g6, you have f4, for example, right? And it's like double pin. So that's one idea. And if we go g6, I mean, that's weakening the 7th rank. Also, we could just go queen h6, and now we can no longer castle. We have to play like king f7, but when we have like rook d7, pinning the knight, and with compensation. Also, ideas like f4, you know, can take us pressure on the e file. Yeah. So you get my point. c4, I think, is too slow. It should be more piece play, is my point. Piece play, central, explosive piece play, not so much side pawn play. Okay. Okay, here, castles, takes, rook e1, attacking the pawn, c6, opening up the queen, defending the pawn, and also strengthening this pawn. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this knight on a3 is horrible. Like, has no moves, basically. And I go to c2, but now black can just take the pawn. So, yeah. Okay. Knight e3, I mean, okay. Now white is down what? 1, 2, 3 pawns? I mean, white's completely lost. But okay, let's see. h3. I think it's too slow. I think white should play like rook d7, putting pressure on the knight on the 7th rank. And when if the knight moves here, say, maybe we'll go like knight f5, right? g7 is pretty weak for black. This is our only chance. And then queen g3 maybe. And then h4, h5. The knight moves and then pressure on g7. This is white's only chance. And maybe also put a rook on d1 at some point, you know. And when if the queen ever moves, we have like rook d8 maybe stuff. Also on the 8th rank, some pressure. But this is the only chance. h3 is way too slow. Okay, g6. Now g6 is weakening the dark squares. So now knight g4, you know. And black will have some weak f6 and h6 dark squares. And knight g4, of course. Okay. Pawn f6, defending the pawn. But this weakens the 7th rank. Do you see? That's another point. Any pawn move from your king that you make, unless it's like maybe h6, and even h6 sometimes is weakening, but any pawn move, generally speaking, you make from your king weakens something. g6 weakens the dark squares. Then f6 weakens the 7th rank. You know, even h6 sometimes can be a hook for a sacrifice. Could be like knight g4, queen e3, knight h6, sacrifice, right? Some sacrifice. Yeah. Okay. Knight h6. Well, I think rook d7 would have been also pretty good. Pressure on the 7th rank. You know, and then we also have ideas like maybe depending how they play, like queen e3, queen h6, you know, pressuring g7. So I think rook d7 also would make a lot of sense. And also actually another move, maybe even the best, would be queen c3, attacking the rook. We only have one Square for rook to move on. Rook a2, but members queen b3 check. Game over, double attack. You move a king, we just take the rook. Game over. Actually, this is the best. Yeah, where do they cannot defend the rook with a queen. They cannot move it anywhere else. The only square I can see is rook a2, but then, like I said, queen b3. And we win the rook. Yeah, actually, white is completely winning. Yeah, see? Again, another weakness of f6 is actually this long diagonal. You should never move the f-pawn. The f-pawn is the Achilles heel in chess. It should stay on f7. When you move it, you weaken the 7th rank and also, as we've seen, the long light diagonal. So that's why make sure you don't move it. Yeah, queen c3 would have been winning on the spot. Okay, knight h6, mistake, yeah, for sure. King g7. Do you see? Complete waste of time. What is this? What is this? Like, at least play rook g7, right? Like, don't go back. At least play rook g7. And you know, if we take, but it's a good trade. Because now the king is on h6. It's exposed. And now I have like moves like this and stuff. And, oops. Wait. And ideas like this and all sorts of stuff. Right? Like, at least keep the tension, you know, I think. Maybe we're missing something, but my point is, like, you wanna keep the tension, you know. But yeah, knight g4, I mean, it's too slow. Rook b4, yeah, now we escape with rook. Okay. Rook d7 finally. Queen e8, okay. Queen takes e6, yeah, the knight is pinned to the king. So, yeah, okay, that's fine. Rook d4. Huh. Okay. Yeah, rook d4 actually is a great move. Rook d4 is a great move. So then maybe queen c6 was not the best. Yeah, that was a great move. So, okay, the easiest would have been to just go rook d1 then. And then queen c6 if we can, right? And then queen c6. Just rook d1. There's also ideas like queen e3, by the way, threatening this, but also threatening queen c5, attacking the rook and also attacking the e7 knight. Right, double attack. So yeah, I think white should have just played rook d1. Yeah, probably queen c6 is just actually a very bad move, it seems, because just rook d4. Great move by it. Although maybe it's not so easy. No, but actually, yeah. Let's see, maybe... Yeah, it's not so clear how to defend. Yeah. Not so clear. I mean, white would have to play like rook e7, give away exchange. Queen e7 and queen b5, but I mean, black should just be completely winning. Black is just up in exchange. So, okay, but rook d4 obviously is a losing move. Queen takes e6, I mean, black's just up a queen. Knight takes e5, what is this? Yeah, and white saying. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.